Welcome to the Paradigm Shift on 4ZZZ 102.1, where we challenge the assumptions of our current society to resist oppression and investigate alternative ways of living, for a world based on justice, solidarity and sustainability. Welcome to the Paradigm Shift on 4ZZZ. 102.1 is the frequency on the FM, and my name is Andy. I will be with you for the next hour of community radio, trying to talk about the things that really matter, not the things that make money for advertisers. That's what we're about. And today on the show, I'm going to be doing a bit of a part 2 of last week's show, which if you tuned in, you will know was about Turnstyle Community Hub, the sharehouse turned community space in HIghgate Hill in Laura Street, which for the last 15 years or so has been running all kinds of community events and has been connecting people in that area and creating a space for people to be able to build connections, build art, build community, build a better world. Now, Turnstyle has been told it has to leave. It's a bit of a complicated situation where they were told the property was going to go on the market, and then they reached out to the many thousands of people who've used it over the years to see what could be done about this, and then found people that would be willing to buy it, and then were told that wasn't enough, that it had been sold anyway. And so that's where Turnstyle's at, and it is coming very much to an end now. I think people have to move out at the end of this month. There is an event on this Sunday night at Turnstyle, which is 10 Laura Street. From 6:30 to 7:30, there'll be a vigil for, to come together and mourn, I guess, but also to celebrate and plan the future. And so you're welcome to come to that. If you don't know much about Turnstyle, you will know more by the end of this show. And you can also, as with all shows on 4ZZZ, you can go back and listen to last week's show on the website, which is 4ZZZ.org.au. But anyway, this week on the show, I'm going to be talking to a bunch of different people who used the space for different things, how it felt, what it meant in their lives and for Brisbane as a whole, and how it feels, I guess, with this era kind of passing on. And so I will speak to Michael Bentley, who was key in the Bike Workshop part of Turnstyle and was one of the founding members. And we also talk about the beginning of the Laura Street Festival with him. I talked to Hanneke Zakarad, who was a musician, or is a musician, and was part of running that Laura Street Festival as well. Ruben Wheat about the organic local food co-op that still happens every week and has for 11 years at Turnstyle. We talked to one of the neighbours, John Cavaleros, and then I will talk to Nellie, who is one of the current residents, about what it's been like to an experience familiar to so many of us, to be told by our landlords that we have to leave and we get no say in the matter. So that's what's coming up over the next hour. Stick around. It's a great story. I've really enjoyed recording this history. It's a sad ending to Turnstyle, but it's been really powerful recording the stories of this space, and I've got more as well that I didn't fit in last week or this week. So, but anyway, we might start off with hearing from Michael Bentley, who many years ago sat down with his housemates and came up with a plan of starting a social space of some kind or another underneath their lovely timber Queenslander in Laura Street. Could you start off by introducing yourself?
My name's Michael Bentley, and I was one of the original inhabitants of Turnstyle from back in the day.
So, we're doing a bit of a history of Turnstyle, and you are a person who has the insider knowledge on how it all started. Can you tell us a bit about the origins of Turnstyle?
Yeah, that's a good question. Many, many years ago, I was wanting to move in the West End area, and I found a ad for a room in a sharehouse for $60 a week, I believe it was back then. And I moved in, and that was the house that's now Turnstyle. And then it was a few years after that we ran the Students of Sustainability Conference in Brisbane. And one of the things we did at the conference is we fixed up a whole bunch of old bikes for people to ride around the conference. Another thing we found at the conference is that we found it really hard to find a meeting space to meet for grassroots organisations where we can organise. And so after the conference, we kind of tried to create that under a house. So we created a little bit of meeting space. We took back all the bikes we fixed up, moved them under the house, and they kind of ran side by side for a while there. And then I actually moved out and went travelling, and it was while I was away that actually became Turnstyle itself. So I'm probably not the best person to ask on that moment, but from the stories I hear, it grew to the point where the friends of ours rented the house next door as well and combined the two of them, and it just expanded from there on.
So what year? SOS was 2006, was it?
I think so, yeah.
Were there other inspirations of spaces like Turnstyle or like bike spaces or whatever that helped to inspire making this space?
Yeah, well, from the bike perspective, at the time, Friends of the Earth had a bike cooperative down near the river. And at the time, they gave us a lot of assistance in sourcing and fixing up the bikes for the Students of Sustainability Conference. But there was a bit of rumours at the time that there was been a bit of a hostile takeover-ish of the cooperative, and it was becoming a bit more of a shop and a bit less of a cooperative, and was kind of separating its ways with Friends of the Earth. So I guess we tried to fill that gap in the community where somebody can come and work on a bike with no knowledge, learn the knowledge, and with not much money.
And political spaces like that, or combining residential and public spaces, were there other places that you knew of that helped inspire that?
I guess there were a lot of spaces. Nothing exactly like that. But I think the beauty of all the spaces, Turnstyle included, is they became very organic. So they kind of grew out of their own needs and their own resources.
You did live there for quite a few years. You were there at the start, and as you say, you went away, but you did come back and live there for a few years, so you would have seen it develop as it went. Did Turnstyle change and adapt?
Always. I think the ability of any successful community organisation or project or anything is its ability to adapt to its own circumstances. And I think the beauty of Turnstyle is because there isn't a dominant figure or a dominant organisation running it. It is what its residents and its members and its community, it's the people who put energy into it are what a Turnstyle is. And therefore it's always different. We went through so many different phases and styles, and so many different groups came through and different things happened. And from like a time where we were having music conference every weekend and like a few times during the week, putting on music festivals in the street, to times where it was very like art-based and creative-based and had definitely lots of different phases.
Do you have any sort of best memories to you that sum up Turnstyle?
I mean, one of the memories that really sticks with me is the first Laura Street Festival we put on. From my experience and my time there, was really the peak of like showing the success of how well Turnstyle had become a community organisation. At the time, we had a lot of people putting on fundraiser gigs under the house, and we've become really quite well known in the street in the local area and in the whole like the suburb itself. So we're getting to know a lot of different musicians. And I remember being at a gig at one point with a couple of the other residents who were with me, and a musician, when we were talking about like how many times we're putting on gigs, and we're like, we should put on a music festival at Turnstyle. That'd be so funny. And then a friend of ours who's a musician walked by and we're like, blah, blah, blah. If we put on a music festival at Turnstyle, will you play? And he's like, sure, I will. And I'm in 3 bands and I'll play. And then another friend who was a musician walked by. We were like, if we put on a music festival, will you play? And from that moment, within a month, we'd organised a music festival in the street where I believe we had 10 houses involved in the street. And I think we had almost 40 acts play and like the full day, and everything was free. And just the way that the community, the street and everyone came together to assist, and so many people who would never expect will be like, you could use our backyard to put on a stage, you could do this, we can come and help. Yeah, I think that was definitely a peak moment for me.
Yeah, I remember it, and it was incredible. I think it really showcased what's possible for just grassroots DIY organising of things, to an event of that scale to just be done with no money, no advertising, no council regulations, any of those things. It was like, whoa, you can really do amazing things.
For sure, I completely agree.
So that was a happy memory with the neighbours, and obviously that hasn't always been that way. I guess, do you have any thoughts on how Turnstyle interacted with the other residents, next door and in Laura Street?
I think we did pretty well interacting with the other residents in Laura Street. I do remember we did have an issue at one point where there was someone in a house in the neighbourhood and was apparently getting annoyed with us with the music and so forth, and so was calling the police on us every night. We didn't realise it was who it was, and it was actually other neighbours that came to us and told us who it was. And we went to talk to her, and we were like, well, what could we do to come to an arrangement? Because what we do, we think is really good, and a lot of people think is really good, but we also think you have the right to live there and enjoy your space. And we came to an agreement that was very beneficial in the end, and I think they even got a bit involved with their kids in some of the events that went on there.
Now, you maybe can confirm this story that I remember hearing at one point about when the house next door, number 12, went on the market, and there was a bit of a worry. Turnstyle was new and just budding, and there was a worry that the wrong kind of neighbours could kill it off. And so I have heard that during house inspections for the next doors, Turnstyle did a bit of vetting by having naked tea parties in the backyard while their house inspections going on. Is this true?
That is a very good question as well, Andy. I have to say I wasn't around at the time, and I have heard other stories, very similar but other stories, so I can't tell you which ones of them are true. But I do know that it is true that 2 different groups of friends of Turnstyle put in a bid to rent that house, and there were definitely events going on to try and discourage other people from renting the house, for sure. Whether it was a naked tea party or pretend domestics in the street, I couldn't say which ones are true.
Okay, well, you would be aware, even though you're a long way from Turnstyle at the moment, that of some of the dramas and Turnstyle at this stage, it looks like coming to an end. I guess as somebody who was there for the beginnings of this, how do you feel about both the fact that it's gone on for so long and taken on so many different incarnations, but also the fact that it's ending now?
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about it, Andy, I've got to say. I'm deeply saddened to see it ending, because I think it's an amazing institution that's had so many different lives in itself and does such good in the area where it is. But also, I think everything has a lifespan and everything has to come to an end. And I think one of the beautiful things about Turnstyle, the space is very useful, but it isn't the space. It's the people that's involved in the space. So I hope that it has another life form in a different space, maybe not even the same name or maybe not even the same format, but at least the people who are involved don't lose touch and keep creating good things. Anybody and everybody can create anything like that just by putting a bit of energy into their own space around them and their community around them. And I hope that many other examples of it are created around Australia and the world, and that the example that is there lives on in some form or another.
Yeah, and that was one of the beautiful things about it, was that it was just people using what they had to try to create community, and it wasn't anything amazing. It didn't come from a big organisation or a big grant of money or anything like that. It was just anybody in any house can do this, eh?
That's right. That was one of the beauties of it. We didn't ask for permission. and we didn't need the right resources. We just tried to get what we could, found it, borrowed it, was given it, and made do. And if we didn't have it, we created it.
All right. Thanks heaps, Michael.
No worries, Andy. Thanks for the call.
Hanneke Zacharad is her last name these days. Was somebody who's living, like a lot of people actually I've interviewed for these couple of shows, living elsewhere in the country at the moment, but was a key person in Turnstyle for a while, organising events, playing gigs there. And I did speak to Hanneke about, I guess, the role Turnstyle played for the music community in West End, because when I thought of musicians that made a home at Turnstyle, she was definitely one that came to mind. And so let's have a listen to Hanneke now. Can you start off by introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name is Hanneke. I am a musician and a teacher. I am currently living up on the Sunshine Coast, but in 2010, at the end of 2010, I moved to Laura Street. And it was kind of like this beautiful realization of a dream. I was really into community, really into actively making community happen. I was a frost community. All I did was talk about community and how it was the answer. And so it was just like such a dream come true to move to Laura Street and find myself amongst so many, I don't know, inspired, divine, like-minded beings. They were already like 10 steps ahead of me and actuating the vision. And it's just, yeah, it was beautiful.
What's your first memory of Turnstyle?
I have some really special memories. I rocked up there. It was Michael and co. They were Paul was there as well, actually. The original housemates rolling around, fixing their bikes. In that same session, I learned so much about bikes, or just the practicality, and they kind of showed me around. I don't know, kind of cast lots of visions and all the things that they wanted to do. I think it was at that moment as well I was introduced to kombucha, which changed my life. Yeah, it was a good first day.
Now, in your capacity as a musician, you played a lot of gigs at Turnstyle, organised a few. What did Turnstyle mean for the musical community of West End?
So yeah, I was part of the organising crew, the first crew that did Laura Street Festival, which was organised out of Turnstyle. Up until that point, me and Turnstyle, we'd done a few fundraisers and put a few events on and everything. And I think because when we started Laura Street Festival, I think it also put Turnstyle on the map for the rest of West End. I think that as a musician, it kind of united and sort of ignited that idea that you become a musician because you want to make the world a better place. Pretty much the majority of musicians who are musicians they want to do something really positive in the world, and they want to make the world a better place. They want to see freedom, and they want to see people uniting under a common cause, and I guess Turnstyle represents all of those things.
Now, I've been thinking a lot about Turnstyle memories recently, and I remember one gig that you did especially where rather than getting up on the stage with your guitar or whatever, you actually joined the audience and led this collaborative choir with everybody that was in the room. Do you feel like Turnstyle as a space encouraged that kind of experimentation or that kind of collaborative, communal, artistic process?
Yeah, I reckon it did. And I wasn't the only one that was using the space to change up the status quo. I think that the way that Turnstyle really, it's kind of, anarchistic. It was, I don't think that everyone who's been a part of Turnstyle would subscribe to anarchism the same way that I do or other members do, but I think that the values of self-determination, of autonomy, of we ourselves, we're the ones that are creative, we're the ones that have the opportunity to go and make something of ourselves. I think that because Turnstiles grew out of those kind of ideas, that meant that creative cup is being given back to everyone, that everyone has contributions, has things to offer. I love this idea. I love that all of us being empowered, all of us actually being able to contribute to stuff, not just the teacher versus the audience. Like, it should be circular. It should be everyone getting involved. And I think because Turnstyle's its beginnings came out of that autonomy and self-determination, and everyone, coming together as equals. I think that facilitated some really rich experimentation and cross-discipline, multidisciplinary, events and moments and collaborations. Yeah, super beautiful. The way that people over the years in so many different settings have come together in creativity and in kind of like dreaming and designing the world. How it could be if we didn't have these, presupposed conditions for how it needs to be. It's super beautiful. I loved that gig.
Yeah, that moment seemed to me to be kind of symbolic of something, of the anarchistic nature of the space, but also just the possibilities, because it wasn't a commercial space. You didn't have to get so many people through the door or make so much money or anything like that.
Oh yeah, what a blessing. What a huge blessing. Like, such a great model that the base costs could be covered by people who are simply renting, and then suddenly there's a space that's available. And the willingness, like, just to think slightly differently opens up so many doors for opportunities. It's huge, absolutely huge.
Well, at this stage, Turnstyle's days are very numbered. How does it feel for you, as somebody who was quite involved for a long time, to see this era coming to an end?
I've had my very militant activist days where I've wept profusely over trees being cut down, and all of the BS that kind of goes on in gentrification and corporatization, and and the greed. There's just so much greed of people being able to justify their greed, that they are justified in asking for more or asking for exorbitant amounts of money. But the thing is, you can't trap a heart. They can take the building away, the Turnstyle building away, for sure, and that's the end of an era in that particular space. But you can't trap our hearts.
Thanks, Hanneke.
You are welcome, Andy.
Hanneke speaking about the Laura Street Festival, which was organised, a large-scale community festival that has run in Laura Street for a number of years, as well as other gigs, fundraiser gigs. There were some huge events there, as we talked about last week, some of the big fundraisers. I should say at the very top of the show as well was Michael Bentley, who was one of the founding members of Turnstyle, and we talked about some of the different things there that went on in the space, including the Black Workshop, which of course is an iconic part of Turnstyle, why so many people have gone there over the years, and about the festival and some of those fundraiser gigs, political groups meeting there, and all those kinds of things. If you have just tuned in, Turnstyle, the house/social space, is being evicted, sadly. The place has been sold, and despite the best attempts of the Turnstyle community, they have not managed to hold on to that space. And so I've been trying to record a bit of the legacy, a bit of the story. I think it's an incredible story of people who just decided that they would use the resources at hand to try to create community where they were. And it's gone through multiple generations. It's survived in a way that so many community groups can't do, to keep on going when the initial founders move on to other things. And so as for posterity, but also to try to inspire other groups, I think I've been trying to capture some of this story. And so I'm going to keep playing different groups or people that are part of this story somehow. Now, one person that I thought of as a great user of Turnstyle is John Cavaleros. John lives a couple of doors up from the house there, and I would see him at all kinds of events there over the years. And so I paid him a visit this week to go and chat to him as a long-term resident of Laura Street about what the house has meant for him and what it's added to the street. Can you start off by introducing yourself?
Yeah. My name's John Cavalleras. I live at 16 Laura Street with my mum.
And how long have you lived in Laura Street?
51 years.
That's a pretty long stint. So, Turnstyle has been a few doors down from you for the last 15 or so of those years. Can you tell us your first memory of encountering Turnstyle?
Yeah, there were some nice young men there. A guy by the name of Paul Hood, Michael Bentley, another nice young lady, Susie Barker, and they used to sort of wave their hands from the backyard and to say, come on down, meet us, come to our gigs, fundraiser gigs, and it was all good. It was good, and I made the effort, I made the decision, I joined them, and the rest is history. And I've been a member so far of the actual food cooperative night for about 9 years and 3 months. But I used to go to their gigs before that. Years before that. Yeah, got to know everyone down there.
Do you have a favourite Turnstyle event that you can remember?
Lots of favourites. Many. The Laura Street festivals once a year. That was fantastic. And lots of the gigs that used to go on at Turnstyle regularly, often, maybe every 6 weeks or so. Yeah, since about 2009, I think. Yeah, I'll miss those. They were very nice. The atmosphere was just wonderful. The music, the food, the drinks, the people was just wow.
So it was just one house, Turnstyle, in this street, but it did tend to affect the whole street, especially with those Laura Street festivals. I mean, you've been in Laura Street both for a long time before Turnstyle and after. How do you think that house being there affected the street?
Well, yeah, it's a community vibe. Just generally, people sort of connected with the community hub here at Turnstyle, number 10, and I think it changed a lot of people's lives. How many, I'm not sure, but I'm sure many people up and down the street were positively affected by it. I for one, very much so. Yeah. And all the gigs there, and some people became members up and down the street on Food Co-op night and more. Yeah, many things were on offer here, like free yoga lessons as an example, and film nights, and it was just beautiful. I'll never forget it. It was a wonderful era.
Do you think that having the festival here and things like that meant that you got to know other houses in Laura Street in a way that you wouldn't have without it?
Oh yeah, no doubt. Yeah, that's true. Probably wouldn't have met my neighbours, other people from other streets arriving at the festivals. Yeah, that was good. Those festivals were wonderful. Just once a year, but I used to look forward to them. Hanging on for the whole year to, be a part of it all. And more, much more. Used to go on the Turnstyle. Wonderful stuff. Yeah, all the gigs, especially.
So, Turnstyle is coming to an end very soon, and it's sad for a lot of people who use it. How do you feel, I guess, with the end of Turnstyle in Laura Street coming up?
I have a lot of feelings about it. It's sad that they're moving somewhere else. I'll miss them a lot because they're very close by, just 50 metres away from my house. And sort of a sense of injustice that such a beautiful community hub, just suddenly it's no more around these parts anyway. Yeah, and that's just doesn't feel right, But it was just too quick. Everything was just too quick. It was kind of shocking. I hope Turnstyle can re-establish itself, maybe very close to my street, so I can stay as a member and stay connected to them. Yeah, and I hope it gets better and better. This is just a temporary setback.
All right. Thanks very much, John.
It's all right.
That is John Cavalleros there. Not all Turnstyle's neighbours have always been completely appreciative of the events that go on there. Often there's a lot of people there taking up the parking spaces in the street, or sometimes loud gigs. But certainly John was an enthusiastic supporter, as you just heard. And so when it came to running those Laura Street festivals, just the number of houses in the street that would volunteer their own houses, their own private space to be a part of this community event was just testament to the way that that Turnstyle built community in the area where they were. Now, one of the things John talked about there was the food co-op that happens there weekly and has for over a decade. I spoke with Ruben Wheat, who was part of starting the Turnstyle Bulk Buyers Food Co-op. Let's have a listen to Ruben. Could you start off by introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name's Ruben. I have been a member with the Turnstyle Bulk Buyers Co-op for 11 years now. We've been going.
And I've been asking everybody this. What's your first memory of Turnstyle?
The first ever memory was Turnstyle. I went there to fix a bike. Not too long before the co-op started, probably a couple of months. I was working with Michael Bentley, who was a former resident of Turnstyle, and I had a bike that needed fixing. He said, "Look, come on down. We've got a bike shed. We've got all the parts. Blah 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 blah." So yeah, I went down and sort of quite amazed at what was going on there.
And then, not long after this, you were part of starting the Turnstyle Bulk Buyers Food Co-op, which has been one of the longest running projects at Turnstyle, along with that bike shed. Can you tell us a bit about the food co-op and how it got started?
Yeah, as I said, it's probably about 11 years ago now. There was a bunch of us working at Food Connect, who they supply all our food still. We buy wholesale from them, and we were getting a box from them, but the box scheme wasn't really working out for us, and so we sort of, were having a chat and sort of said, well, let's start a co-op. Let's see how that goes. So, yeah, we the first buying night there was maybe 6 of us there, and it was not at Turnstyle. It was at someone else's house, and then the second week that we started buying, we moved over to Turnstyle, and it's stayed there ever since. But it was basically just a group of us who sort of wanted to access organic, local, I guess ethical food at an affordable price, and that seemed like a really good way to do it.
Were there other models that you'd seen that inspired setting up this kind of buying in bulk and then dividing it up amongst people? No,
not really. Not really. Nothing that I had seen, and I don't think the others that were involved in sort of the setup had. But we sort of, as far as I understand, from my experiences, we kind of just winged it, sort of found our way through it. It did. The co-op grew fairly organically. As I said, there was maybe 5 or 6 of us at the start, and then a few more people came, and we just sort of had to keep adapting the model as more and more people came.
And Turnstyle obviously is a key part of this food co-op. It's not the only part now as it's grown, but how does space like Turnstyle facilitate setting up a group like this?
Oh, it was absolutely integral. It wouldn't have got to where it got to if it wasn't for Turnstyle. It was really great to just have a space to base ourselves. We sort of, we knew that every single week we could turn up there and it would be on. They also have they've got a large space under the house there, and at some point when the co-op had grown to sort of a reasonable size, we started to buy some dry goods in bulk, and they said, look, you can have this corner of the under the house there to set up your dry goods area. And so, we sort of built some shelves, and it just allowed us to sort of expand. And also, I think it was a lot of people kind of knew of Turnstyle independent of the co-op, and they sort of came along to the co-op because of that.
It certainly grew from that initial handful of people to being, at times, it was huge, packed under there on a Wednesday night, and then eventually other groups started up around the city. How did that process go of it expanding?
I think it just kind of happened organically, as I was saying, that it more and more people just kind of heard about it. It was really just by word of mouth. We didn't advertise. It wasn't really a conscious sort of decision to sort of say, oh look, we've got to grow this thing. We need more people. It just happened organically. People heard about it, and they'd come along and sort of think, oh yeah, that looks like a good idea, and they'd join. And I know definitely of 1, 2, probably 3 that grew out of Turnstyle. I was involved in setting up the Tuesday Collective, we sort of there was a group of us again who were involved in Turnstyle and sort of wanted to try out a pre-order system. Yeah, we created a splinter group, and that's still going today. And there's been a few groups that have kind of, I guess, heard about us and what we were doing there, and they've kind of come to check out the model. There's one down in Ipswich Good Food Co-op, I think it is. They sort of heard about what we were doing, and they sort of came and had a look, and we had a bunch of discussions with them about, you know, the best way to do it, and they sort of went off, and they're still going strong. They've actually incorporated a proper co-op. Out of the Turnstyle model, there was one of the guys was a web designer, and so he created some software specifically for us at Turnstyle and the co-op called Let Us Share. And he's sort of since created himself a little business by using this software specifically for co-ops. I think he's definitely the few in Brisbane use his software, and then there's a couple in New Zealand and a few around the place.
So Turnstyle is imminently coming to an end. I assume that the bulk buyers co-op will keep going in another location, but I guess how does this feel, you know, this era coming to an end?
It's really sad. Because Turnstyle's been our home for 11 years. You know, that's the only place that the co-op has really existed. And it's, you know, the Turnstyle space is such a, you know, it's a real community hub, as the name suggests. There's a lot of things that kind of revolve around it.
Okay, thanks. If people are interested in the bulk buyers co-op as a way of sourcing local organic food at affordable rates, how can they do that?
The best way is probably through our Facebook page, which is just search Turnstyle Bulk Buyers and you should find us.
All right. Thanks heaps, Ruben.
Thanks, Andy.
Ruben Wheat talking about the Turnstyle Bulk Buyers Food Co-op, which has run there for many years. There's been all kinds. There's so many different groups. There's a capoeira group that currently meets at Turnstyle and does Brazilian dancing there, and just the amazing range of things that can happen when you open up a space that people can use. And the last interview I'm going to play is with Nelly, who's one of the current residents there, who is about to be on the lookout for a new house, or he's already on the lookout for a new house. And so I did speak to Nelly about that aspect of it, about the fact that it is a house as well that has been moved on. So let's have a listen to Nelly. Can you start off by introducing yourself?
My name's Nelly, and I've been a resident at Turnstyle for the last 2 years.
What's your first memory of Turnstyle?
So my first memory of Turnstyle was, strangely enough, I interviewed for the house when I was in Adelaide. So I didn't know anything about Turnstyle, anything about what this place was. And I hadn't been to Brisbane before, and I just landed here in this incredible community, and it was just, I don't know, serendipity. It was perfect, knowing no one, and then all of a sudden just being like smack bang in the middle of a community with shared values and so much going on.
Was it a bit of a shock when you turned up and found people using the basement for different community groups?
No, I mean, that was explained in the interview, and I had a look at the website and kind of got a vibe for it. Definitely wasn't a shock, but it was definitely unlike anything that I've experienced as a renter.
And after you'd been there a little while, there, I think a bit of talk about the old days of Turnstyle, and something that hadn't happened for a few years was the Laura Street Festival, and you were part of reviving the Laura Street Festival last year. Can you tell us how that happened?
Yeah, so for anyone who's been into the Turnstyle toilet, they'll know that the walls are just plastered with beautiful hand-drawn posters of all these different amazing events that have happened at Turnstyle that span like a decade. And a lot of those posters are about Laura Street Festival. And so I'd be sitting there weeing and reading all these different posters, and I was like, what's this vibe? And yeah, the conversation obviously came up. 2020, as we all know, was a bit of a hot mess. And I had only just moved in, so I wasn't really ready to do that. But by 2021, I really felt part of the community enough to initiate something like that. We started out by inviting everyone who had lived at Turnstyle and everyone who'd been involved in previous Laura Street festivals to a potluck, just having a general chat. And then the snowball started rolling, and then at the end was the festival, and it was amazing.
Yeah, it was remarkable how much it was exactly like the old festivals, really, and the vibe of it, and just the way the street was just transformed into amazing, friendly DIY festival. It really was a beautiful thing, and showed, I guess, the way that these things can sustain, people moving away, people not always the same people being involved, but that given the opportunity, things will survive and people will still keep coming out and making these things happen.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's the sort of one of the special things about Turnstyle is that we have these shared values, and the idea of a community festival where everyone just brings their energy and whatever it is that they want to bring. That isn't profit driven.
So we have talked a lot about, the different groups that use Turnstyle and things like the festival. But of course, it's also a house, and so it's worth remembering when a space is being evicted that is also a house, and that renters have very little power over how to mould a space into somewhere they want to live in and be there for a long time. So can you tell us, what's it been like the last few months with the news that Turnstyle was going to have to be moved on for somebody living there?
Quite frankly, it's been one of the most stressful and emotionally draining times of my life. On a very personal level, I've done things like really worked on the vegetable garden. I built a shed in the backyard. We should know as renters that we don't get to make our homes the way we want and keep them. That's not what the system is it? That's only a luxury for people who are privileged enough to be able to afford a home. There's, been the stress of uncertainty as we went through this community process of possibly buying the property, and then having quite a deceptive landlord who would say one thing to our faces, and then that eventuated into nothing. That was an incredibly difficult experience just on a, interpersonal level. We've had the stress of now having to find a new home, and there's a pandemic going on and prices have skyrocketed. There's the stress of, as creatives and people who do a lot of unpaid work, having to find a space that we can afford and be able to continue doing the community work without having to get a full-time job and then therefore no longer to be able to do these activities. So there's so many different things that have just compounded in a massive amount of stress. Finding homes for all the stuff here, wanting to continue the space, but, carrying that. It's been a pretty rough time.
A lot of people, I guess, will have sadness around Turnstyle, will miss it, and some of the groups, won't be able to have that, a space to do those things. But for you, it's a very basic thing about having a place to live. What's next for the residents of Turnstyle? So
the residents of Turnstyle and some other people in our community are looking to start a new share house with Turnstyle underneath, and we have been looking at properties. But it's this really challenging thing because, Turnstyle's been running for 16 years at 10 Laura Street. Relationships that have been built on this street, in this neighbourhood, have been so ongoing. They have developed over time, authentically and organically. And that's not something you can just sort of move into a house and transplant. It's really hard to just move in and sort of say, oh, we're a community hub and we're going to be having activities. And and that's not how we roll. So now we're finding ourselves at the beginning of this journey again. And even though, there's some sort of exciting elements of that, there's also this sort of overarching exhaustion of, okay, we're signing a 12-month lease. What happens when the next landlord decides that they don't have enough money and they just want to turn a quick buck? What happens when that landlord at the end of our 12-month lease decides to increase our rent $100, which they can do? We're completely at the mercy of people who just want to make money, and we just want shelter, and we just want to live our lives and create art and to have somewhere safe and cool home, just like everyone else does. But our needs and our wants have no value whatsoever compared to the desires, needs and greed of an investor.
Yep. Well, that is, I guess, the economic story of what's happened to Turnstyle. But there is thankfully so many other stories that weave in together as part of this tale. Is there anything else you want to leave us with, Nellie?
It'd be nice to leave on a positive note after going on that rant. I think that as far as, the sale of the house goes and everything that's happened, important going forward to remember that this community isn't defined by a house, and that the relationships that are forged are so much more important and so much bigger than this space. And it's just a house. We're so lucky as a community, and we will continue to make art and create and find spaces for community wherever we go.
Okay, thanks, Nellie.
Thanks, Andy.
That is Nellie, one of the current housemates of Turnstyle. Hope you've enjoyed the last couple of weeks of exploring the past and the legacy of Turnstyle and what's going on there. And I hope it inspires other people to go out there and make a difference, build community in the places where you are, look creatively at the space around you and what it can mean. One of the reasons I keep asking people their first memory is that one of the powerful things about Turnstyle was it really did open you up to other possible worlds when you walked into this space and you thought, wow, imagine under every house you could do this, and the connections that came from that place and all kinds of things. So it's a story with a bit of a sad ending, it's not the ending, a bit of a sad moment at the moment, but a lot of powerful things along the way as well. And I'll give one last plug to, there is a vigil happening outside Turnstyle at 10 Laura Street this Sunday night, 6:30 p.m. If you have been involved in the space and you want to come along, I guess say goodbye to it, get together with people, talk about what's next for that community, come along to that. And yeah, there's no end to the creative spaces and community responses and things that we can create. It's all up to us, and so the next chapter is unwritten. That is all we have time for on the Paradigm Shift. See you next week.